You were born and raised in Chicago, and you certainly had your Irish pride, you had the Notre Dame pride, and you had a sense of your roots. But I love when I read about when you married your husband, who's major. I mean, he's just Irish, okay,
right,
period,
exactly.
from Ireland. And so when you'd go over there, the family would be like, "Oh, you're his American."
You're an American,
yeah.
right?
And but you said, "But I'm Irish." And then they said, "But if you don't know where you're from,"
exactly.
So that sort of opened up a whole new, like it was like being Alice in Wonderland and going through a whole nother like part of the journey.
That's a very good way to put it, right? Yes. Because I knew until I actually stood on the piece of Irish ground that really was my family, that I wouldn't really could be considered Irish. As you said, Martin's aunt said to me, "Where's your home place?" I said, "I don't know." And she said, "Here's Martin's American Wife." So it took me almost 20 years after I married my husband to find the place. And it's a little village about 5 miles west of Galway called Barna.
Yeah.
And when I found the village and found the birth certificate of my great-great-grandmother, Honora Keeley Kelly, it was a revelation, and I felt, now I can tell the Irish story. I'd gotten a PhD. I knew the academic side. I had studied all of Irish history and read all the great literature that you talk about. But when I started to hear her voice in my head, I knew I could tell the Irish-American story through my family. And Galway Bay was the first, and it was how they ran.
Right, which... when I did the show, it's an amazing book. I mean, every chapter is a standalone, actually. It's historical, it's personal, and I don't want to say like a romance, but like it's just like things that pull at your heartstrings that, coming to America, ending up in the South, having, only African-American people, but not even, people helping and trying to get across the waters and losing your mate like right at the most crucial time and people starving, and it's just amazing. And this all happened.
Yes, it's right.
And your parts of your family experienced all this. And I don't love, but people call it the potato famine, but you really call it the Great Starvation.
Exactly.
8 million people. Is it 8 million?
They were reduced. 1 million died at least.
Right.
They don't really know the number. And then 2 million escaped.
Right.
But they never really counted the people. They don't know how many really died. There's unmarked graves all over Ireland, mass graves. They're just excavating some right now. So the amount of suffering, and most Irish Americans that came during that time escaped against incredible odds.
Right, and then some of them got here and it wasn't that much better for them. Right,
exactly, right. The no Irish need apply. But America gave them a chance, and especially Chicago. Chicago was a frontier town. It didn't have the overlay. It didn't have the power structure that New York and Boston did. And they got in literally at the ground floor. They built the ground floor.
It was tough time for the women.
The place where they lived was called Hardscrabble, which gives you an idea of the kind of place that it was.
Exactly, it is crazy. But so then, what I wanted to ask is, when you wrote this book, did you have a sense that there were more coming behind? And did those voices start coming? And what part of this book do you feel like you wrote and then it just sort of, something took over you? Because I think when you write, sometimes it's like, it's more than you, when you sat down to write this, I don't think you knew this was coming out, did you?
No, exactly. And my father had a cousin who was
sister,
a nun who lived to be 107. And she had known the great-great-grandmother. And she also knew other members of the family. The next generation, the first generation born in America, what they achieved was amazing. And
rebuilding the whole structure of a lot of Chicago,
right.
The roads and the thing and the mayors and the
one became the mayor.
System.
Exactly, exactly. Really, it shows that once the kind of oppressive hand of the English overlords were lifted, the Irish achieved amazing things. I think it's true of every immigrant group. They come to the United States and all of a sudden their natural talents can be expressed. And it's quite amazing. So I was interested in the next generation, in Ed Kelly, who was the mayor of Chicago, and then in Nora, who was Honora's granddaughter, and was the modern woman of Irish blood. And in real life, she did go to Paris. Now, she went as a buyer for Marshall Fields. In my book, I have her on the run from a bad boyfriend.
And she was a writer in this, right?
She was a photographer.
Sorry, yeah. Why would I say writer? I don't know.
We're thinking about writers, right?
Yes.
So it's funny because my aunt did know this woman. And I said to her, when I realized that she was going to read this book, and I've got some sex scenes in it, I have her on the run from this, you know, gambler, gangster. And I said to her, I said, you know, Aunt Marge, this is historical fiction. I said, I gave Aunt Noni this boyfriend. And she said to me, Aunt Noni had a lot of boyfriends.
Oh,
So she started to tell